part 2 of the Epi Ensign EA14 RBT, which is the same as a Gibson Saturn, which is a 45 RBT, GA45 RBT. So what I've done is I've got the parts in, parts have come in, and although I've been working on it on other parts of the circuit, these are basically going to be the caps, some power supply resistor that I change out. Actually, that cap there is for the bias circuit. I went and got 700 volt, 5 watt screen resistors I may put in there. And over here I've got a bias pot. I'm going to create an adjustable bias circuit. But what I've done so far is I've actually redid the tone stack circuits. And what you see here is a diagram of what I did. And also I removed those T filters, those tone sucking filters. Basically what we have here is a Fender type of circuit. It only has a treble and a bass. Does not have a mid pot. But a couple things that I did here. These pots in the actual amp, these pots are 1 meg pots, as is the volume. So volume, treble, and bass are all 1 meg. So I had to redesign this stack to work like a mid-scooped Fender type of circuit. But what I wanted to do is I didn't want to make both circuits the same. I wanted to have a difference between the two channels. So what I did is I designed the normal channel, or the channel 1, the non-reverb channel. That circuit is with the values above. And what you'll see is if you diagram this out and look at where the frequencies lay, this is much flatter. There's very little mid-scoop. This is more similar to a Marshall, perhaps, type of tone stack. So I've got a 680 picofarad capacitor that's handling the high frequencies through the treble pot. The tone slope resistor is a 56K, 22 nanofarad, and here's part of the reason why it's not as scooped is there's a 22K mid point, or mid resistor, I would call that. That's the resistor that sets what would have been where the mid-range pot is. So anyway, so that's where we are. Here's the tone stack for the normal channel. However, on the reverb channel, I went ahead and went with a circuit that is much more mid-scooped. You'll see the circuit is in here, tucked it in, try to save some space in here. That circuit's the lower values, got 100 picofarad treble capacitor. You got 150K tone slope, and a lot of that had to do with the 1 meg pots. These are 22 nanofarad, both of the what you would call the mid and the bass control capacitors, and only a 4.7K resistor, which scoops a lot more of the mids in this circuit. And also what I did is I wired this presence switch with a typical bright cap, which basically allows the high frequency to go around the tone, the volume pot at any volume. It has no effect if the volume is wide open, but at lower volumes, more of the high frequencies will go through the circuit. So now I've got to decide what to do. Also, you'll see I did some of the bypass caps. There was the wrong value here. I decided not to put a bypass cap. There's one in the circuit. There's a little question mark. This is different than the circuit. This is the part of the tremolo circuit in there. That's the Roach. Some of the rest of the things I need to do, obviously, is I've got to go ahead and set up the power supply and the switching. And also one thing that's going to be a pain is I've got to replace this. You'll see here that, I don't know if you can see it, in there's a broken terminal. And that is, let's see, that is pin 3. So that's a bad one to have just laying the wire and soldering it to the stub of what was once the terminal on pin 3. as you probably know, pin 3 is the plate for the tube, so that's probably the most critical connection voltage-wise, at least in the amp. Okay, so there we are. So I've got some nice space here. Part of that T filter crap was over here. This is probably going to end up being my preamp filter capacitors. You'll be in here. I've got to decide. I've got a layout set up for those terminals. The bias has got to go in there. Obviously, the filter caps, I'm going to try to get in there. It'd be great to be able to use that space and not have to take up any space in here, because or somewhere around here I want to put the bias pot. So there's quite a bit of work to do yet, but it's well on its way. And there's the screen resistors that are in there. Tempted to leave them, but they may not be high enough voltage. That's a thing that I see in a lot of amps. People drop in those 5-watt cement power resistors, and the problem is they can only handle 300 volts or so, 350. Maybe peaks around it, but if they're running at high voltage on those screens, they'll fry pretty quickly. Anyway, so there you go. That's why I got the 700 volt versions. Don't know what these are. All right, there you go.